that happens, and then they say to the gentleman there, oh, that's a great idea. I say, I'm so glad John likes that idea, because he and I can work together, because I came up with that idea too. So it's not any direct attack or challenge, it's trying to make common cause. So there are techniques to learn about being one or very few of the women in the room. But that's why we need to elect more women, so we don't have rooms with only one woman. We have rooms with lots and lots of women making decisions.
Okay, this next question is from Roxana Cruz, who's in the 12th grade at Orthopedic Medical Magnet High School. Hello! So Roxana says, Madam Secretary, there is no nation in the world that prides itself in being the best as much as the United States does. Yet we rank embarrassingly low in test scores, literacy, and math skills. We have known for years that education is the silver bullet, yet it seems like education is the lowest priority in our government. My question for you is, what can our generation do in order to improve the abysmal education system in this country?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, you're right that when it comes to test scores, we don't rank at the top. We often rank, you know, 10th, 12th, even 20th compared to other nations. That's not the whole story, because we still have a lot of creativity and a lot of dynamism and people who are innovating all the time. But one of the ways we can improve education is to focus on helping our teachers get the support and the resources that they need to have to do the job they're being asked to do. Also to support leadership in schools, like principals and others who are trying to manage what is a complicated enterprise. You can have 1,000 people. That's bigger than most companies in our country. But then finally, our government in many places doesn't invest enough in education because too many people don't see it as the future, which it of course is. So I think young people, those of you in junior high and high school, I think the more you can speak out for the importance of education, the more that you can support your fellow students, your peers, in respecting your teachers, respecting the education that they are being given, so that it becomes kind of harder for adults to say, well, we don't want to invest in education, because students themselves are showing up at school board meetings. They are online talking about how important the education they're getting is to them and their future. And they're enlisting more students to be supportive of their own education. You know, like when somebody blows off their classwork or doesn't care about their education, you know, gives them some peer support. Help them understand that this is what will give them options in life. You know, they will be able to do things with an education that they can't do without one. So I think the more vocal students are in support of education, the more adults have to pay attention to the importance of funding and supporting education themselves.
It sounds like you think education is powerful. Why is that?
I know education is powerful because people who don't want you to be powerful tell you education is not important. People who want you to be powerful will tell you, like I'm telling you, education is critical to your future and to the options that you will have in your life. And you know, I've traveled all over the world. As your Secretary of State, I went to 112 countries, and I saw so many young people who are literally begging for an education. I went to a refugee camp in eastern Congo, where there had been a conflict raging for years, and probably the best estimate is 5.5 million people were killed. I was in this refugee camp, and I was surveying it to see what more they needed and what the United States could provide. And I met with some of the adults in the camp. And I remember asking a woman, I said, so what is it you need? And I thought I'd hear, you know, more food, water, better living accommodations. That's not what I heard. This woman who'd been driven from her home by militia, who had seen members of her family brutally murdered, she said to me, what we need is a school. We need a school for our children. And so I know that for most people in the world, giving their kids an education is their passport to a better life. And I just want all of us in our country not only to support education and educators, but also to recognize how lucky we are, because there are still tens of millions of children, a majority of whom are girls, not in school across the world. So let's make our schools the best they can be. Let's really lift up and support our students, and then let's try to help other people around the world get a chance to have an education too.
This next question comes from Marissa Ume, who's in 12th grade at Diamond Bar High School. She says, as a student, oftentimes it feels as if our eventual success is dictated by grades and test scores, with the final verdict being college acceptances. Looking back, were there any moments in your schooling, whether it be a class you struggled in to a grueling finals week, which you overcame? Having reached an admirable point in your career, what advice would you have offered yourself at that point in time?
Oh, you know, I was not the best math and science student. I really struggled. And yet I kept trying because I was convinced that it would provide me some skills that I would need. So I did take, hard math and science courses, particularly science courses when I was in high school and even when I went to college, and I never did very well in them. And I remember going to talk to the physics teacher that I had, and she said, you know, it's important to try. You know, obviously you're not going to get a good grade because you're not as good as the other students, but you have to keep trying in life. Don't give up. And that sounds kind of obvious, but I kept trying, and I did not get much better. I did much better in other subjects. But I learned enough to appreciate what it is my math and science teachers were trying to teach me. So if you are struggling in a class, get help. Ask for help. In fact, I can tell you this, from all the work I've done on education over the years, students who ask for help do eventually do better. Some students are embarrassed to ask for help. Some students think, well, they should know this, so they don't want people to see they don't, so they don't ask for help. And it doesn't just have to be help from your teachers. Ask a smart student in the subject that you're struggling in for help. So I just believe that learning something about areas that you're not that good in or that you don't even like that much gives you some additional good basis for understanding what goes on in the world. And of course, pursue those areas that you love and that you're good in, because that's telling you something. This is what you're meant to do. This is what you like doing. But it's not easy when you're used to being successful and you're not. And so you got to come to grips with that. And it's a good lesson to learn because everybody's not great at everything. And so the more you can appreciate what your struggle is and what other struggles are, you know, the more empathetic and compassionate you can be, not just in school, but in life afterwards.
Okay, this next question comes from Giselle Reyes, who's in the 12th grade at STEM Academy of Hollywood. She says, out of every possible word out there in the world, what is the one word you would use to describe feminism and why? And she said, it's to Hillary Clinton, and she says, AKA the woman who has taught me to be brave and restrained even in the face of people like Donald Trump. Thank you, Hillary Clinton. You truly are an inspiration. I hope this message gets to you. So there it is. Well, what is one word you would use to describe feminism and why?
Equality. Equality. And I will say, feminism is the belief that men and women should be equal under the law and in the economy, in our society. Not better, not worse. equal. And what I hope is that we will continue to move toward equality, because it still is the unfinished business in our country. And that's equality not only between men and women, but between races and ethnicities and, you know, all of the divides that we are still struggling with. And I remember in the very beginning, I told you about the peanut farmer from Alabama who was on Ellen with me. You know, that's what he said. He said, you know, our laws say that all men are created equal. Well, we should treat each other like that's true. And if you think about that, that's what it means. It means the search for, the journey toward the achievement of equality. And I'm going to keep fighting for that as long as I can.
I love that. Thank you so much. That's all the time that we have for today, but this was amazing. Is there anything else you want to add at all?
I just want to thank everybody for letting me come. You can't imagine what it's like sitting up here where Jessica and I are looking out at this sea of all of you. And I just hope you have not only a great day, but a great year, a great new year, and keep fighting for what is right and what you believe in. Thank you.